This is not my twin brother. This was our man of the year. But the plaques, the name tags that were just given out, there's a guy who's been doing that for years for us. Jerry? Stand up. Jerry Endor. Ed Stein is going to be introducing our speaker.
Good morning, everybody. I hope I'm not pulled off the stage, but I have another subject also before the speaker. So we've talked to you before about mitzvah cards, that the club has forever had mitzvah cards. They're blank cards. They're Israeli related. We used to sell them for $5 each. I have a few packs of them that I have had at home. They're 3 for $10. They're pre-stamped. They have a U.S. stamp on them. If you'd like them, I have 3 packs of them, 3 for $10. You can't buy a greeting card these days for that kind of money. So if you come to see me afterwards, I have them here. Our speaker this morning is David Bross, who's around here somewhere socializing. I'm not sure where he is this minute. David, are you here? There he is. Good morning. David is the co-chair. I have to look again. He is the JCRC, which is the Jewish. For those people we use so many acronyms, and people are like, "What's JCRC?" JFCS. JCRC is the Jewish Community Relations Council. I know we've had a number of members who've been on the board. I think we have a current member on the board. You're still on the board too?
Yeah, Ed, I'm on the board.
He's on the board. Anyway, he is the co-chair of the JCRC Israel Advocacy. And David is an attorney. He's of counsel of the firm of Bross and, I'm not sure. Frankel. Is it a disability law firm?
Primarily disability benefits. We represent veterans.
Specializing?
Nice for you guys.
Okay.
Yeah, it's one of our areas.
David, I'll let you tell the members a little bit more about yourself.
That's it?
That's it.
Heard a lot about the South Jersey Men's Club over the years. Mostly good. It's been a long time since I've been invited to a club. The last time was the Hair Club for Men. I turned them down. Anyway, thank you for the introduction, Ed. And thank you, Ed Silver, for having called me to talk about doing something. And thank you, Randy. You're not Randy. Where's Randy? Another big guy with white hair. Anyway, very good morning to you. It is an honor to be here. And I have to admit, I'd asked Ed, why are you inviting me? Like, what do you want me to talk about? He said, whatever you want. I said, well, that's a dangerous thing to say. But I guess it should be something Jewish. So I will be talking about something Jewish in a few minutes. But I'm not an expert. I'm not an expert in Israel. I'm not an expert on anti-Semitism. I'm certainly not an expert on Judaism. In fact, I'm pretty much secular. I don't belong to a synagogue. We did belong to TBS years ago. But I know a thing or two. And some of you, like Mike Perloff, knows about that because we've talked many times. So I thought, since nobody's ever asked me to give a Devar Torah for good reason, I would do something kind of resembling a Devar Torah this morning. So in a moment, that's what I'm going to do. And I'll talk only for about 10 minutes, and then we'll have some Q&A. But before the Q&A, I've asked Randy to help me to show a video which has nothing to do with what I'm talking about. But I think it'll be a lot more entertaining than anything I have to say. And I'll tell you more about that. One thing I want to be clear about... Oh, that's better. It's a good look for me. Yes, I am a board member of the JCRC, very proud of my years at the JCRC. A few familiar faces, Len Berman, right here in front. We've had many, many discussions. And Len is a great advocate for Israel, by the way. You should let him speak at some point if you haven't already done so. But I am not here on behalf of the JCRC. I'm here in an individual capacity. So if I offer any opinions, particularly during any Q&A, I want to be clear that they're strictly my own opinions. They are not the opinions of the JCRC. At the JCRC, we endeavor to remain strictly nonpartisan. I think we succeed in that regard, but I'm not bound by that policy. So I may let a partisan remark slip. And if I do and offend somebody, well, that's just too bad. I have some materials out in front where there's some other materials. I copied a few essays that I like. There are thousands of them out there. God bless you. A few I wrote about a year and a half ago. Sabrina Spector, the JCRC Executive Director, asked me to write something about media bias, so I wrote an article, and then I asked David Portnow, the former editor of the Jewish Community Voice, if I could write a follow-up, and I did. So I've reproduced paper copies of those. Maybe some of you have read them before, but they're out there if you want to read them. And there's a few other things out there that I think are helpful. I also brought with me some books. I may mention them if I get a chance, because I'm all about becoming educated. You cannot be an advocate if you don't know what you're talking about. And there's a lot of information out there, but there's even more misinformation. I don't think I'm telling you guys anything you don't know. Our mass media does a very poor job of helping us when it comes to Israel and dealing with anti-Semitism. And I like to say dealing with anti-Semitism because fighting it or combating it is pretty much futile, but you can deal with it. All right. I think you already know that the name of the topic is Contemporary Lessons from a Recent Holiday. And the holiday that I chose was Purim. You guys probably all know the story of Purim, and at the time, that was the most recent holiday. The subtitle of this talk, though, is Jews Who Don't Fight Back Don't Survive. And that is the lesson of Purim, which commemorates the saving of the Jews from genocide in ancient Persia. Now, what I'm going to say is not original. This is basically a modified version of an essay from a woman named Elise Ronan, who writes a newsletter called An Unimportant Woman. Anybody know who she is? Didn't think you would. I didn't know who she was either. In the world today, pardon me, it is considered radical to say that you are Jewish. Some of us have been trying for years to get people to listen to the problem of anti-Semitism on college campuses, pardon me, this is the pollen talking, and in the politics of the world. We want people to take seriously what is happening instead of making light of it as if it's some kind of childhood nonsense that will go away. It may recede, it may lessen, but it's not going away. So we now have an explosion of anti-Semitism not seen since World War II. So this leads me to talk about the Jewish holiday of Purim. The story goes that King Achashverosh, a misogynistic, megalomaniacal pig, wanted his wife Vashti to dance naked in front of his friends. When she refused, he sent her away and began to look for a new wife. There was, of course, a harem of hundreds of women at his disposal, but this is the story. There was a nationwide contest, and he chose the beautiful woman. You guys really know this stuff. Now, Esther's uncle Mordecai, someone of importance in elite circles, was not supplicant to the king's advisor Haman. So Haman decided he was going to have all the Jews in the Persian kingdom slaughtered in one big genocide. If you think collective punishment when it comes to Jews is new, think again. Mordecai, upon hearing of this plot, went to Esther and begged her to intercede with the king, and eventually she did. The king had Haman and his sons hanged. By the way, I just want to stop for a moment. Am I coming through okay? Okay. This is the epitome of the Jewish joke. What does every Jewish holiday mean? They tried to kill us, we won, let's eat. We also take time when reading the book of Esther to drown out the name of Haman every time it is said. It is Jewish tradition to say Yamach Shmo, or to erase the name of someone who is evil. So Jewish children attempt to do just that on Purim with noisemakers. In some places they try to erase the name of Ed Stein, but that's another story. Oh, come on. But the part of the story that people like to forget is that this was not the end. Getting rid of the leaders did not end Jew hatred or the desire to slaughter. There ended up being a huge battle between the Jews of Persia and Haman's acolytes. The book of Esther says that over 70,000 of Haman's army were killed at the battle, but the Jews secured their future. There would be no Jewish genocide in Persia. This would also not be the last time Jews were singled out for genocide. The short list: Babylonia, Assyria, Persia, Greece, Rome, the Crusades, the Holy Roman Empire, Tsarist Russia, and Eastern European nations, various Islamic caliphates, Napoleon, World War II, the Soviet Union, and the Arab world since the 1920s. And the latter is with whom we are dealing with most today. Yet here we are, the Jewish people. So what is the purpose of the story of Purim, and what does it have to do with today? I think it is the realistic understanding of how, even if you cut off the head of the snake, the body still lives. People need to stand up and be counted. Whether we like it or not, there are sides and the need to be on the right one. That evil doesn't just disappear because you say abracadabra. Society needs to rid itself of the cancer of anti-Semitism, and yes, that includes, of course, anti-Zionism. If anybody doesn't think that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, you should leave right now. Does ridding the world of virulent, violent anti-Semitism mean battles with death and destruction? Unfortunately, it does at times. Not because those who love life want war, but because it is clear that if there is no battle, then there will be no future for anyone who does love life. And for the battle that is to come, we pray every day for the protection of the innocents, the IDF soldiers, all soldiers of the Western world, and to rid the world of the scourge of Hamas and its ilk. But more important, we need to hold those responsible for the carnage. Hamas, of course, Iran, Qatar, the Arab world leaders that promote Jew hatred, Russia, China, and the enabler of Islamists in the Western world, such as South Africa, Australia, Ireland. If anybody's going to Ireland, I wish you would cancel your trip. Spain, the UK, and France, and this sadly just names a few. The deaths to come are all on them. Is there anyone powerful with backbone enough to say the truth and to stand and be counted? The Jewish people do not need the world's permission to live free in their indigenous homeland. The Jewish people do not need the world's permission to live free in the diaspora. We are entitled to every right given to every other people on planet Earth. Now, last month also featured International Women's Day. Keep in mind this essay was written by a woman, where the world talks about the human rights of females around the globe. Yet not one major feminist or women's group condemned the sexual violence against Jewish women on October 7th. It took the United Nations months to even acknowledge that something had happened to Jewish women on that day, despite all the video evidence made by the rapists and murderers. So while we can feel extremely bad for the girls who have no life under the Taliban, that women are persecuted in Iran, that there is gender apartheid in Saudi Arabia, that female genital mutilation is practiced in Yemen and other parts of the Muslim world, that honor murder is rampant, even in the United States, that it is now legal to marry off 9-year-olds in Iraq and elsewhere, and that the most dangerous words in the world are, "It's a girl." Let us make sure that our Jewish women are safe in a world that cannot be bothered to acknowledge the atrocities that happened to us. The truly sad thing is that sexual violence is a hallmark of many wars, not the least of what is happening right now in Sudan and under Boko Haram. And no one's talking about that either. There is also another battle taking place, the battle of words. We see that continually on social media, where the anti-Semitism is ramped up to Nazi levels. We see the complicity of the news media and politicians. That's a favorite topic of mine. These are modern-day Hamans who seek to perpetuate lies about the Jewish people and promote genocide against the Jewish state. The military expert Andrew Fox writes in one of his latest essays how Israel can combat the lies of genocide. Show pictures of the plump, happy Palestinian children with their pearly white teeth, the supermarkets in Gaza full of food, the Ramadan dinner tables laden with food. We also saw those children, warm, well-fed, definitely no medical issues, jeering at the coffins of the strangled, slaughtered Bebas boys. Also the fact that those accusing Israel of genocide need to change the definition of genocide in order to apply it to Israel. How crazy and sick is that? Which seems to be indicative of duplicity and malicious intent, an understatement. I have yet to see any pictures of Jews who survived the Holocaust jeering at anyone, or the survivors of Srebrenica jeering at anyone, or the survivors of Pol Pot jeering at anyone, or the survivors of Rwanda jeering at anyone. What you see in survivors of an actual genocide are emaciated, vacant people lost in the world. That is the picture of the Israeli hostages being exchanged for murderers. The only ones starving in Gaza are the hostages. So what can we do in the face of relentless lies and hate? Well, on Purim, we are commanded to get so drunk in celebration so that we cannot tell the difference between Mordecai and Haman. While there are many in the Jewish world who take that instruction seriously, we should look at it as the need to remember how we survived, because we took it into our own hands. We did not wait for someone else to save us. We saved ourselves just like we need to save ourselves now. Thank you. Before we take questions, and you can ask me anything you want, I may not be able to answer it. I'd like to show a 5-minute video just to break things up a little bit. This was pretty intense. The video that we're going to show, and I hope it comes through, I want to explain what it is. It's actually a music video. Let me ask a few questions of the men here. How many of you attended the Israel Advocacy event in March, just by a raise of hands? Pretty good number. It was a great event honoring Nelson, who has been long overdue for recognition. Rudy Rochman, tremendous speaker. Thank you for those who did attend. And we do this event every year. One of the main things that I do is help plan programs. And this is our annual program. 2 years ago, we did a program, we did a program featuring a gentleman named Dumasani Washington, a pastor. Did anybody attend that? Just Len, that's it. That's a shame, because you really missed an amazing program. I actually brought a book that Pastor Washington wrote. Pastor Dumasani Washington, I assume very few of you know who he is. He runs an organization called the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel. He is a passionate Zionist, and he does amazing work, not only promoting Zionism in the black community in the United States, but in promoting, enhancing the ties between Israel and African nations, and trying to deal with black anti-Semitism, which is a major problem in this country. So we had him as our speaker, and again, he was tremendous, but he also happens to be a trained musician and music educator. And we didn't bring him here to do music, but he has had a group called the Hebrew Project, and they've made records, I'll call them records, and some music videos. And there's a music video, which is how I first even heard about him years ago. And it's really inspirational. It's called O Jerusalem. And if it doesn't give you chills, you're not living. So I want to show that. Again, it has nothing to do with what I talked about. It's just a beautiful music video, and hopefully it will come through. So, are we ready?
How can we sing the Lord's song in a strange land? How can we sing the Lord's song with shackles on our heads? When Zion calls to us, the city of our God. Lift up your heads, all ye gates, the everlasting door. Jerusalem, come on, sing. Whoa, 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 whoa. I forget thee, oh Jerusalem.
Okay, guys, we're going to go by table, Ira, by table. Okay, this is 1. That's 9. Okay. Ooh. Doesn't go. Table 1, do we have a question? Hesh, please do.
Hold on. Before questions, I just want to say something about this video. First of all, I get chills every time I see it. I hope some of you did as well. Dumasani, who I consider a good friend at this point in my life, wrote and produced it. Very talented musician. But this is the kind of man that we need. We need allies in our community, non-Jewish allies. We need us, okay, that's what I talked about. We have to stand up for ourselves, but we have to reach out to people who want to help us. And that includes the evangelical community. Now, Dumasani, Washington is not a traditional evangelical pastor, okay? They have a very interesting approach in their church. They actually practice many Jewish traditions, Shabbat, Hanukkah, but they don't try to convert us, just so you know. Nothing like that. So don't get scared, don't get nervous, that they just want to convert us so that we can all die in Armageddon. I just want to mention, if I'm ever in a bad mood, there are 2 things I like to watch: Seinfeld and that video. You can find that video if you're interested. It's on YouTube. Also, I don't know if it's still up, but there is a recording that was made of the JCRC Middle East Institute event at which Dumasani spoke 2 years ago that Len Berman saw. And I think you can access that on YouTube as well. I highly recommend it. It's really good. Again, it has nothing to do with the music. Dumasani talks about, again, what he's trying to do to enhance Jewish-Black relations in our country, which are at a low point, okay? He denounces Black Lives Matter and explains why. He is a disciple of Martin Luther King, as I believe everybody in this room is. But the lessons of Martin Luther King seem to be losing ground, which is a terrible, terrible shame. Anyway, just wanted to mention that. Questions?
Okay, table 1, Hesh?
Yeah, there's obviously great controversy on college campuses of free speech versus hate speech, of student provocators who are brought in to spew hate against the Jews versus misguided students who are advocating for Palestine, and also administration of colleges who don't seem to know how to deal with this. So what's your comments on this?
We have a new administration, a new sheriff in town. You may not like to hear it because many of you probably don't like Donald Trump, but his administration is finally trying to do something to deal with that. It's a very difficult problem, and even though we have to count on ourselves, we also need the help of others. And this government is certainly making an effort. Now, it's very complex, since I brought it up myself. If you're on the left, you're going to argue that he's overreaching. Trump, that is overreaching. You can't just dictate that they have to get rid of DEI programs, or they have to be forced to hire professors who are quote-unquote conservatives, and they may be right. But if you're on the right, the argument would be, and Jonathan Tobin of Jewish News Syndicate, JNS, which I highly recommend, he argues that unless you get to the root of what's been going on, namely things like DEI programs, which unfortunately enhance anti-Semitism. And I have a book on there that I highly recommend. It's called Woke Anti-Semitism by David L. Bernstein. I don't want to get too far afield here, though. But he argues that unless you get to the root of what's causing the anti-Semitism, it'll never go away on college campuses. But there have been some concrete steps. that can be built on. The most important one, in my opinion, was the use of Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. In 2019, during his first term, President Trump signed an executive order which extended Title VI protection to Jews for the very first time. Before that, Jews were not part of Title VI beneficiaries. They could not sue on that basis. To his credit, President Biden renewed that executive order. And Title VI, which really is about discrimination, is a very important tool for, for litigators and for the government to use to deal with anti-Semitic acts on campus. So there are legal remedies. And what's important now is that we take the offense in this battle. And there are groups that are doing that. And one of the things I always tell people is, while there are many things we can do on our own, supporting organizations that fight these battles is very, very important. I'm going to mention a few. There's the Lawfare Project, which is run by Brooke Goldstein. Maybe some of you have heard of this. There's the Brandeis Center, which is run by Ken Marcus. These are people and organizations which have been filing lawsuits now for several years against colleges, universities, and others for discrimination against Jews, based on a lot of what you asked me about, what's going on in college campuses. But lawsuits alone is not going to do it. Changing the culture, I don't know if that can ever really happen. But at least these legal efforts are making a dent. And the universities are getting nervous because when they start losing federal money, they've got problems. They may have big endowments, but those endowments are earmarked. They can't just take that money to pay tuition or to pay their professors. So I'm just giving you a little bit of an answer to your question. It's a very difficult one for those people with children or grandchildren of college age. Well, I don't have that right now, but if I did, and they got into Columbia, I wouldn't want them to go there. And there's diversity of opinion on that. People say, well, you shouldn't be scared to do it. But I wouldn't want their college years ruined by having to deal with, on a daily basis, the nonsense that goes on in some of those campuses. So that's a little bit of an answer to your question.
Anybody else on table one? Table two?
Hi.
Larry?
I was wondering if you could speak to why the JCRC decided to change from the Mideast Institute to the Israel Advocacy format. Previously, when you had like 2 or 3 different speakers, you had some good back and forth exchange of views, and now it's been completely revamped to this format. And I'm not complaining, I'm just curious why. And I kind of missed that, though. It was nice going to some of those older events that we at the Men's Club all actually helped out with. So please comment on that.
Sure. Yeah, I'm old enough to remember when the format was having 2 people with a moderator. Howard Jaffe, I know, was moderator several years. I mentioned Jonathan Tobin. I remember he was one of the speakers at one of those older events that you're referencing. There was a decision made 8 or 9 years ago that we needed to raise more money. So money has something to do with it. But we also thought that it would be nice to make this a bigger event, cast a wider net, and bring in big name speakers. And the first time we did that was John Bolton. I don't know if any of you came to that. And we had a great audience. It was very successful, both in terms of attendance and raising revenue. And the event itself was, I thought, very powerful. It was still called the Middle East Institute.
Yes.
This is the first year that we changed the name. And we changed the name because some of us felt that Middle East Institute was maybe an outdated name for what we were trying to get across. So we came up with a generic name. We may go back, who knows, and we may also go back to a format of having kind of a debate between two people. Or we may have an additional program, as we did for several years in addition to the Middle East Institute, where we would have a center-left and a center-right expert, and they would address a topic. So we haven't abandoned that, but we do want to have an event where we feel we can draw a lot of people and not always, how do I say, Dumasani Washington, for example, not a big name, but a great speaker. I just wish more people had come because they would have been inspired. Last year we had Emily Austin. I don't know if you know who that is. She's a social media influencer and a sports broadcaster / journalist, along with a ball player, Ryan Lavarnway. So we tried to lighten it up a little bit while still addressing Israel advocacy, and I think we did a great job of that for the people who were there. But you have to come. If you don't come, what good is it? Len Berman was the only guy who came to see Dumasani Washington, and we honored Rabbi Krupnik that year. So I don't know if I answered your question, but that was the reasoning behind it.
2, anybody else? Table 3, Vic?
Even though now I'm mostly moderate / conservative, 60 years ago I was a civil rights worker at the University of South Carolina, and I did a lot of good things when I was young. Today, the African American community is mostly against Israel. That's what I believe. They're not so crazy about Jews in general. June 21st, 1964, Schwerner, Cheney, and Goodman, 2 Jews and a black guy, were killed by the Klan. And I contend that one way to get more African Americans to be more pro-Israel, to be more pro-Jewish, is to educate them about that, because they know nothing about the Jewish history with the NAACP, way out of proportion. And I recommend that a theme be advocated by the JCRC as well as other powerful Jewish leaders to commemorate June 21st, 1964 as a day that 2 Jews and a black guy in solidarity fought for the right thing. And the theme would be, we were there for you then, we could use a little help now. What do you think?
Yeah, I like the idea. It makes sense to me. Everything you said, I agree with. And I'm going to come back to my friend Pastor Washington. That's exactly what we tried to do 2 years ago. And we did get some of the local black ministers and pastors to come to the event, which was part of the idea of doing it, because we have an interfaith portfolio in the JCRC, and we're very aware of the problem that we have with black anti-Semitism in this country. And again, I'm just going to keep singing his praises. Washington and his organization, the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel, make a note of it if you want, IBSI. I like the IBS part, I can relate to that. That's exactly what he's trying to do. And he's had some success, but boy, when you're dealing with the mass media, that's the problem. That's a big part of the problem. I'm not going to get into the political party problem right now, but that's part of the problem too. But your idea specifically about setting aside a date makes sense. I'm not exactly sure how that gets accomplished. Maybe write to Don Norcross, Senator Booker. I would write off Andy Kim at this point. He's a traitor to us, my opinion. But again, I agree with you. And yeah, it's a major problem. It's not just the black community that's not educated. Even the Jewish community is not educated. I have a feeling most of you guys here, when you heard what I talked about, it wasn't particularly new to you, but you go outside, you go to the younger people, they're clueless. And they're fed a daily dose from social media, which I don't know that much about. I know a little bit about TikTok, but the mass media. And day after day, year after year, not to mention what they learn on college campuses, some college campuses anyway.
Table 4. Right here, guys. Alan's table over here. Table 5. Dr. Lee.
Yeah, do you have interaction with any journalist, news, magazine, columnists? And I know there's very little circulation within that venue, but I also know that the people who are hired to write columns on a regular basis are also out in public speaking to a lot of seminal groups and group leaders. And they can echo a sentiment widely through those venues. Yet I never see any of these respected columnists saying much that's positive about the American.
Such as who? I mean, give me a name or two.
Eleanor Venus in Philadelphia, Peggy whatever.
Noonan.
Peggy Noonan?
I don't see much said that's strongly positive about the American Jewish community.
You need to diversify what you're reading. I have a list out there. It's not a complete list, obviously, but it's pretty extensive. And if you go to that list, you'll find a lot of what you're looking for. Are you asking if I've had personal contact with columnists?
Or if they're, through the Institute, JCRC, if they're reaching out to those people and getting positive feedback.
Somewhat. Over the years, I've had some personal contact with Bret Stephens, who now writes for the New York Times, with Barry Weiss, who publishes an online, digital newsletter called The Free Press, which is not on that list because that list, I try to confine it to media sources that are primarily interested in Jewish or Israel-oriented issues. But the Free Press, again, I'm mentioning Barry Weiss because she and I have spoken and written to each other, is a great, great advocate for the Jewish community and for Israel. And she is a liberal Democrat, okay? It's not a political thing. I've had contact with Alan Dershowitz, again, not a journalist, but somebody who writes frequently, has been one of our greatest advocates over the years, still is.
Stuart?
A couple things real quick. At the advocacy you spoke about on March the 16th, I think it was.
Yeah.
I was in the middle of the color guard carrying our post flag.
Thank you.
U.S. flag to my right, Israel flag to the left, the way that should be. Quick thing, would you be able to put a post or maybe give Bob a list of your information sites where you get information from and things like that?
It's right out there. It's on paper.
It's on the table.
Yeah.
Okay, the other thing is I agree with you. We now have 2 senators who are against us in Israel, Booker and Kim.
Booker, not as much, by the way, but go ahead.
And again, for Kim, wherever here is going to the legislative breakfast, I think it's next week. Okay, Kim is no longer the speaker. He was going to be honored as, okay, just so you know that.
And Selena was on the phone with Kim last week telling him why the Jewish war veterans withdrew.
That he would not speak with Selena and Nelson, and they called. They spoke to an aide, but he would not speak with him.
She spoke with him directly. He called.
Okay, and then I have one other thing down here. If I can read my own notes. Okay. I collect articles. I cut them out of papers, magazines, download them for my grandchildren. For history, revolution, was here. My granddaughter's now 19 August. She has my copy of Constitution, all the charters from states, all this kind of stuff. She took it out of my house one day visiting when she's 8 years old. She follows it. She goes through it. Okay. So that's why I wanted to know what your sites were. So I can cut out articles and do things like that. So I'll get that.
Yeah, again, it's not a complete list, but I think it's a good list. Some of the media sources you may recognize, you may already follow. I do the best I can. I do a lot of reading, but nobody can read everything that's out there.
Cable 6?
Can I just two articles? An article that shows why the Gaza Strip will never be a sovereign nation by Legal International. Another one that goes to the details where most of the Arab war is not Arab. They come from other sources that are not Arab.
Okay, thank you.
I have
Cable
those two articles for more
6.
concern.
Table 7, Ed's table. Ed?
I think that the single biggest problem in the Jewish community right now, the lack of education and self-identification is by a younger generation. And that's something that I think is the single most critical issue. The Hebrew school education in most of the secular movements especially are not propagated. They're not generating a sense of identity. And that's something that is a tremendous failure. And the solution to it is not so easy, because a lot of the parents don't have a strong sense of Jewish identity. But that's something that, when you talk about culture, and you were bringing that up earlier, the basis of the culture is religion. And it doesn't mean that everybody has to be a devout believer in God as the individual. I'm married, my wife has become Orthodox, and I'm still secular. But I have a great understanding of the importance of having a foundation in Jewish history and understanding. If you do not have an understanding and knowledge of the Bible, there's no way that you can defend Israel or Jews remaining as a people. Just secular Judaism does not propagate itself. So anyway, that's something.
So what should we do about it, right?
Well, JCRC basically, as a community outreach, basically just has to have some way of encouraging, but you have to be able to address and recognize that it is a problem.
We do. But the problem is so much bigger than what we can handle, although we do our best. For example, this past Thursday night, we co-sponsored a program with Stand With Us, an organization that I highly recommend you support. It's a grassroots organization. The program specifically addressed what's going on today in K through 12 education, which is part of what you're talking about. I know you're talking about other things as well. I can't really address the Hebrew schools because I don't really know much about it. My kids are long gone from that. My grandchildren probably won't go at all. And that's an intermarriage thing, and that's a whole nother problem, assimilation.
There's one other issue that's also very important. When Shmuel Butuach started to say that Booker was dead to him because he supported the Iran initiative on Rehoboam, I think that was a disastrous mistake and something that, from a JCRC standpoint, needed to be addressed. When you say that Kim is dead to us and that Booker is dead to us because...
I was speaking only for myself.
I understand you're speaking on yourself, but still, I think that Booker had a tremendous background in Jewish education from his time doctor with Butia. The fact that Butia basically said that he was dead to the Jewish community because of that is a major mistake in my point, because you're taking somebody who was a political ally in most cases and saying that because of one episode, because he sided with his political base, that he would no longer be in front of the Jewish community. I think that was a major mistake, and I think that that's also really true of Andy Kim. Andy Kim is not irreconcilable. He's not somebody who you can write off and say that he's never going to be a supporter.
He spoke with Kim.
And you can work with Booker.
Kim spoke to us. Okay.
If I may, I just want to address one thing you said. When I disparaged Senator Kim, It was not only because of his recent vote, I guess you guys probably know about that, he was one of
Yes.
15 senators who voted against additional weapon sales to Israel. He also voted against something called the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act. You guys know what that is? When he was a congressman, he was one of 91 congresspeople who voted against the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act. I'm not going to get too much into it, but it was an attempt on the federal level to codify something called the IHRA working definition of anti-Semitism. And that to me was a real arrow to the heart and showed to me that he had written off the Jewish vote and the Jewish people. And I have my own opinion as to why he's doing that, but that doesn't really matter.
What year? What year?
It's about a year and a half ago. It passed the House. It's been held up in the Senate. It was held up by Schumer. I don't know why it's still held up now. I think eventually it will be adopted. And I want to make a plug for JCRC since I'm mentioning this working definition, which is very important. Our JCRC has succeeded in now getting about a dozen local municipalities to adopt the working definition of anti-Semitism that the IHRA put out. It's a minor victory because the state of New Jersey has still not passed this bill. There's a bill co-sponsored by our friend Jim Beach, S-1292. It's out of committee, but it's being held up in the Assembly. There's a bill, A-3558. And one of the things I'm doing is lobbying, trying to get this thing out of committee, get it to a vote, get it signed by Governor Murphy. Because New Jersey is one of only 14 states in this country that has not adopted the definition. But getting back to Andy Kim, he voted against it.
Joel?
Unacceptable.
I have a question for you. You mentioned something about Jews being codified in Title VI or something, that anti-Semitism should be recognized as...
It's based on national origin. That's in the text of Title VI.
What about other minorities that are not privy to this, like the LGBTQ community, transgender? There are Muslims in this country that are discriminated against all the time just because they're Muslims. That doesn't mean they're anti-Semitic. And this country's, if you read the Constitution, which I'm sure we all have already, guarantees freedom to everybody, all right? We shouldn't have to put Jews specifically, or African Americans, or anybody else. We all should be treated the same way.
When we're done.
And it seems to me that we've taken a turn in this country that you have to be a specific type of person to enjoy your freedoms in this country. And you can't be Jewish, you can't be black, you can't be Muslim. You have to basically be Christian, and you have to basically be white, and in some cases you have to have a lot of money. All right? So I'm sitting here and listening, and I'm listening to what we can say about Jews in this country and how we are discriminated against. But you know what? We're not the only ones. And if we're going to stand up for ourselves, we have to stand up for other groups that are being marginalized the same way we are. And if we can't do that, we don't deserve the help that we're asking for.
If I understand your question, I got to tell you, sir, the Jewish community has, among all minority communities in the country, stood up for every group that you've talked about.
No doubt.
Excuse me, I'm talking. Every group that you've talked about for as long as I've lived. What we now have to do is stand up for ourselves because other groups are failing to stand up for
I am not
us.
disagreeing with that.
Thank you. I'm
I'm
done.
just disagreeing with the fact that we just, at this point,
Come on.
okay, we are not doing that for other people.
Actually, we are. I disagree with you.
Oh, okay, here we go. 7, or I'm sorry, 8?
Just to
Yeah,
finish,
Bob?
what I'm trying to say to you is they are not mutually exclusive. Just because I'm talking about standing up for ourselves doesn't mean we stop standing up for others, and we still do.
I can get on board with that.
Thank you.
So I'm curious as to what strategy Pastor Washington is taking in his approach to the black population to try to get them to understand better what Jewish history has been and what their relationship to Jews should be.
Yeah, good question. I actually asked him that question when he spoke 2 years ago. I moderated part of the program. He and his group, he can't do it all himself, they actually go to various black churches around the United States and have conversations with black ministers and pastors, some very large churches. He admits he gets a lot of resistance, but he's had some victories as well. And
Did he mention to you
yeah,
what that resistance was based upon?
it's based on ignorance. It's based on the misguided idea of intersectionality, that the black community should identify with the suffering of the underdog Palestinians, not the Israelis. That's really what it boils down to. There's a lot of... Yasser Arafat was very clever, and he basically made an effort, devised a strategy to make inroads with the black community in this country, to show them that we are your allies, not the Jews, because we are all underdogs. We're all people of color, and we're the oppressed, and the Jews and the Israelis and the white people are the oppressors. And he's largely succeeded. The Black Panthers, interestingly, Eldridge Cleaver changed his mind about that later on. Dumasani, by the way, again, wrote a book. I have the book. It's called Zionism and the Black Church. And he gets into some of those things in the book. But it's a great question.
9, Steve?
Have you had an opportunity to speak to any Muslims in this community or within the community to get them to participate in some, dialogue or whatever?
I have not personally, but we do have an interfaith committee, and they have. I don't know names or details. I think it's been limited because we have a large Muslim community that is pro-Hamas. There is an imam that heads a mosque right on Springdale Road in Sherry Hill, who has made some very disturbing, incendiary speeches, sermons. But in answer to your question, yes, but I think it's been limited. I think it's been a challenge. But I don't know much personally. If you want to know more, you can contact Sabrina Spector at the JCRC.
Okay, our last question. Our last question, and we're not going 1 through 9 on the tables, is Gary Sternberg. He is our PR guy. If you see all the coverage that we get in the Jewish Voice, that's because of Gary, and by profession, he's a journalist. Gary?
All right, speaking of PR, you mentioned earlier that a lot of the problems were being caused by the mainstream media on the college campuses, and I kind of disagree with that, not because I agree or disagree with the mainstream media, but let's face it, the young people don't read the New York Times. They don't get their news from ABC News. They don't get it from CNN or Fox News. They get it all from social media, and they get it from the propaganda they get it from SJP. Now, how do we combat that? I mean, writing an op-ed in the New York Times isn't going to do squat. It's not going to accomplish anything with them. It's the social media, which you mentioned you don't know that much about. I don't know that much about it. I mean, most of us don't know what our kids know about social media, but that's where the problem is. How do we deal with that? How do we counteract what SJP is telling all these kids?
Yeah, no, you're right, Gary. And by the way, I've known Gary now for several years, and he knows what he's doing. There are organizations that I think are trying to deal with that. Stand With Us is one of them. They have a whole segment of their organization that deals with social media. The woman that we brought in last year at our Middle East Institute, Emily Austin, I mentioned, she's on social media. She's got 2 million followers on Instagram. She puts things out. So there is a battle going on, but I have to admit, it seems like we are losing that battle, admittedly. Our numbers are just not there. Again, I don't know a lot of detail about it, but I know, again, there are organizations dealing with it. I keep mentioning Stand With Us because they're one of the better ones.
We're gonna have a little presentation. Ed Stein? Ed?
Yeah,
Ed Stein, please come up.
thank you, thank
Randy,
you.
can you take the
Applause,
picture of
applause.
Okay, so I was very happy to be invited. I appreciate it. I want to thank you guys for your attention. I want to thank you for your great questions. I hope the video was a nice touch. A little more interesting than anything I had to say, I'm sure. Anyway, thanks again, guys.
Okay, Dave, one thing. Ron Ettinger, can you raise your hand? You get a year's free membership, whether you want it or not.
I'll just
Ron will
take
give it to you.
You're a bagel.
We have no takeout program.
We don't deliver.
Ron will hook you up with the information so you can sign up.
Thank you very much.
New members here. So on my left, there's a table that you need to know about. We collect food every month, and we ask you to bring food for the Jewish Family Service for their food bank. We also have eyeglasses that we donate. We'd like you to bring any old glasses for distribution to the Lions Club. And we have a book exchange and a music exchange. So all the books that we ask you to bring in, take books home, and the excess books go to a charity called Book Smiles. So I just want to let you know that before our program. Okay, it's on your left now. The books are on your left at the table. Dr. Lee and I have a program to discuss, but let me ask you a quick question. How many of you ever read Lee Child's books on Jack Reacher? A lot of hands. How many Michael Connelly's books on Lincoln Lawyer?
Yeah.
Okay. How many women would have raised their hand? So, if you've ever tried to join a book club, your eyes glaze over because women choose books that we don't read. Dr. Lee had a suggestion about a book club, and I'm going to ask him to explain why.
Good morning, and thanks. I'll try to make this brief. As we get older, we're all at risk for altered cognitive function. There are certain games we can play that can help protect cognitive function, and reading, which is distinctly a human activity, has been shown to be great at protecting cognitive function as long as it's accompanied by the art and act of discussion with other people. And we have been discussing starting a men's book discussion group, because if you go to a local library, you're not going to find that the other people in that book discussion group are going to vote for topics that are going to be of interest to you as a man. It's very prevalent that men leave book discussion groups because most of the discussions are about topics of interest to women. And don't forget, after the first 10 or 15 minutes of discussing the books and the authors, they kind of schmay around over food and chit-chat, which is also not usually of interest to most men. So we thought that we have a great variety of choices, and that establishing right here with this club as a function of this club, a book discussion group for men. And there's a little sign-up sheet on the tables to put your name, email address, phone number if you wish, to express your interest. And then Ed and I and anyone else who wants to join that nucleus will try to get a meeting time and place together. for the size of a group that shows interest. You might put down, days or times of the week that you could meet. And nobody really has to buy a book anymore to join a book discussion group. Libraries will provide a bag of books for book discussion groups to use, and only one member of the group needs to be a member of that individual library. There are lots of diners and restaurants that seem to cater to book discussion groups to come and use their facility. That way they get to sell food as well. And I look forward to seeing what the responses are.
So just to repeat, there is a slip with the pen, and if you're interested, fill out it, and Lee and I will collect them after the meeting. Just for my awareness, though, how many of you might be interested? Just raise your hands. Very good. We'll see you at the next meeting.
Okay, Mike? Almost at the end, boys. I got 4 things to go over, and I'll do it quickly because of how much time we have left. Again, just a quick one sentence. Don't forget to bring in things that are on that table, which is the books, the eyeglasses, and the food. The food goes to the pantry. Which, yes?
Has any thought been given to as to whether or not smartphones should be something that could also be used?
Are they doing it for cell phones?
As far as I know.
I don't know, but anyway, we'll find out. But you know what? If you have cell phones that you need to, guys, please, if you have cell phones that you want to donate, bring them in. We'll figure out what to do with them. Ed'll figure out what to do with them. That's the we. As far as this club, some of you are fairly new. We are part of the Middle Atlantic region of the Federation, the International Federation of Jewish Men's Clubs. Officially, we are, believe it or not, the Young Men's Hebrew Association of the South Jersey Men's Club, because that was the incorporation we did 36 years ago. And when we were younger. Yes, and an interesting thing about this group, unlike almost any group you've ever belonged to, is, picture this, no one has ever gotten burned out. Every past president still participates one way or another. That must mean that something's happening. And that something that's happening is almost everybody does something. We had a volunteer survey done this year that had almost 60 items on it. How many people ended up filling it out? More than half our members. So remember, you don't have to be the guy if we're doing something like putting up the sukkah outside the JCC. You don't have to be the guy who's going to climb up on the ladder. You could be the guy who hands them something. There's no excuse, none, for doing absolutely nothing. That's why no one ever gets burned out. So I urge you, if you have not yet done the survey, fill it out. If I recall, there's about 20 items, 15, 20 items you could do from home, research type of things. The next item is, we do need a few people to volunteer on things. In case you haven't noticed, we have somebody who takes care of the Zoom folks. We got, at any given meeting, we'll have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people who are participating by Zoom. Could be snowbirds doing it from Florida. Could be guys that are busy doing something else that you're going to put aside a couple hours for listening over Zoom. Could be somebody who's on a vacation and wants to listen to the speaker. But we got that kind of guy here. That's Marty. He's going to need backup. We got the videographer, Eli. And Eli is the recent backup who's now in charge for Dave Nydorf, who's on, hi Dave, I know he's on Zoom. And Dave was doing it for years. Before Dave, I believe it was Bob Greenberg. We need another person just to help out, just in case. Step up, volunteer, do something. If you're not sure what to do, you're lucky. These guys are around. You can work with them for a meeting or two to know what to do. Another one is what Randy does, which is the video. Randy, what are you working on? Audio visual, if you're going to help out with that, good. Okay, so we need the backups. Guys, you know, most of the people in this room are retired.
We're dead.
And we're dead. And what that means is you're free to travel the world and do things. And we have, for instance, I know that Eli is going to be going to Israel for how long?
2 weeks.
2 weeks, and it's going to cover one of the meetings. We need somebody to do this. Okay? Speaking of Israel and Zoom, we have actually had, and I believe we're having it again, during the pandemic, we did not miss a meeting. And what we ended up doing was, you're stealing my thunder. Oh, sorry, and you're going to hear from Ed. I don't want to steal his thunder, but we actually had we had a speaker from another country speaking to us live, and we could ask questions back and forth. I don't know, maybe we're going to do it again, right, Ed?
Maybe.
The last thing I want to talk to you about is I mentioned we were part of the Federation of Jewish Men's Clubs, and every 2 years the Federation has a convention. And we started going to the conventions in 1991, I believe it was. And at that convention, they let us join, and we learned about something called torture awards. Every 2 years, the International Federation of Jewish Men's Clubs gives awards in different categories. The current one has 21 categories. By the by, we actually, 1 year, I don't even remember what year it was, won Best Overall Club in the entire world for the Federation, which covers several continents.
Last year we had 5.
And we actually, in 2023, we actually won, I believe it was 5 awards. And we have these, when we had our 25-year anniversary, we had in an auditorium downstairs across the entire front of the room, we had set up easels and stuff all across the front of the room, all the awards we won, more than any other club. And that
in my basement right now. Not enough room. My wife and
got to keep the boss lady happy. But meanwhile, back at the ranch, getting back to the torch awards, who does them? Well, this time we had, I think, 6 or 7 guys for the awards. We're going to submit them within 3 weeks, I believe it is. We have to submit them. We've done 6 or 7. And if you are one of the people on the torch award committee, raise your hand, please. Thank you. And let me tell you, folks, you should volunteer. Yes, some folks here are cutting yourself short by just looking at this as a breakfast club. Boys and girls, we ain't nothing like a breakfast club. We do things.
Yeah, we had great topics.
Yep, and a whole lot of you guys, look, I think it's fair to say that not too many of you guys qualify for food stamps, right? You spent a life building a career, making money, but now you can make a difference. Get off your butts and help. And it starts small. When we come here for breakfast, you won't believe the number of people that have to do things for that to work. On our volunteer survey, how many people have done the volunteer survey? Awesome. If you haven't, please do it so that you can find an easy way to come in and do things. You don't have to give your life into it. Start small. And on that, is there any questions? Jerry.
Whose name is on the back of the plaque?
Jerry Emder makes the plaques for us. For everyone. Thank you.
Good morning again. Mike kind of hinted on a program that we're going to have in June. I don't know who participated. It was during COVID. We have a live, interactive, guided tour in Jerusalem set up for our June meeting. Hopefully, if Randy can figure it out, we're going to have the guide on the big screen. He will be talking to us. We are interactive with him. We will have the ability to ask him questions about what he's showing us. We will also attempt to put it on Zoom and hopefully have your wives or whoever else might be at your home join us on the tour. It was wonderful the last time. I think does everybody remember who the guide's name is Yoni? It will be the same guide assuming he's not called up for service again. He's been called up a couple times in the last couple of years, but in any case, we have him back for the tour. It will be the June meeting. You'll get more information about it as we get closer to the June meeting. Just one more quickie. These are all at your tables. One of them has been arranged by one of our members, Barney Kaplan, who's also sponsoring the grandparents meeting. It's, I believe, June 8th. We have a nationally known speaker, Dr. Flo Rosen, also known as Ask Bubby. If you'd like to participate, take one of these and join us on June 8th. And also, there is a 3-day camp for those of you who were at Couples Club. You're familiar with it, which the JCC is running. It's 3 days. It's $162 to members. It includes a trip to the Jewish Museum. There's some other activities. Have a look at it.
It's day camp. You don't have to.
It's a day camp, yeah. You don't have to bring your sleeping bag.
Okay.
You can, I guess, maybe.
All right, so let me talk a little bit about what we're doing about the positions. My presidency ends June 30th. So under the rules, we have to have elections by June 1st or somewhere there, and then we have to select who's going to be in the board. So please, if anybody's interested, we have a number of positions, and you can talk to Phil. Phil is leading the board to do that. So again, please try to volunteer, especially after you listen to Perloff here. You know, maybe it worked. Okay, so now we're going to have 50-50.
You're going to pick.
I'm going to pick. We have $58, which is significant.
58 for the House, 58 for you.
So the last three numbers is 747. 747. All right.
All right, there you go.